these three denominators to find my least common denominator. They have nothing in common, so it's going to be x times x minus 1. I'm going to multiply both sides by x times x minus 1. Okay, x times x minus 1 times 3 is going to be 3x times x minus 1, multiplying the monomials first. And then x times x minus 1 times a negative, so that's going to be a negative 18 over x minus 1. The x minus 1s will cancel out, so be left with minus 18x. Then on this side, only the x's will cancel out, so I'm left with negative 12 times x minus 1. Now I'm going to distribute 3x to x, 3x to 1, negative 1. Bring down my minus 18x. Distribute negative 12 times x is negative 12x. And negative 12 times negative 1 is positive 12. Then I'm going to add 12x to both sides and subtract 12 from both sides. So I'm going to have 3x squared. This will give me minus 21x, negative 21x, negative 9x. Negative 21x and positive 12x is negative 9x. And then minus 12. Greatest common factor of 3. Factors of a times c. That'll give me a sum of b. That'd be negative 4, positive 1. So 3 times the quantity x minus 4 times the quantity x plus 1. Zero product property. 3 can never equal 0 if you don't have a variable, then you just toss it out. X minus 4 equals 0. X plus 1 equals 0. That's the answer to number 10. And then when I put these together and when I add 4, I get x equals 4. And when I subtract 1, I get x equals negative 1. And that's the solutions I'm supposed to get according to here. I notice that I have a binomial that needs to be factored. This binomial has a greatest common factor, so I'll factor out that x. My least common denominator is going to be x times the quantity x minus 5. I am going to multiply both sides by that least common denominator. I think this one may be the one that I'll be able to talk about why we'll get no solution. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Okay, so when I multiply this least common denominator times this fraction, the x minus 5s will go away. I'm left with 2x. When I multiply this fraction by this least common denominator, the x's will cancel out. I'm left with 3 times the quantity x minus 5. On the other side, when I multiply, these cancel out. I'm left with 10. Then when I want to solve, I'm going to distribute, combine like terms, so I got 5x when I combined like terms, and I added 15, so I get 5. Now notice, I get x equals 5, but look at the solution. It says no solution. Why? Why can 5 not be a solution? Well, you have to go back and look at your denominators. Can x be 5? 5 minus 5 is 0. Can you have 2 divided by 0? No, so x cannot be 5. That's called an excluded solution. Because it would make my denominator 0, it has to be excluded from the domain or excluded from the solutions. When I look at this, x couldn't be 0 either. So if I had gotten x equals 0, then I would not be able to say that x equals 0 is a solution because it makes that undefined. And again, 5 makes this undefined, so therefore that means there's no solution to number 9. Looking at question 10, I see a trinomial that I definitely know can be factored. I can find factors of 4 that will give me a sum of -5. That would be -1 times -4. So I'm going to write those factors underneath that trinomial. X minus 1 times x minus 4. I am going to find my least common denominator first. That least common denominator is going to be x minus 1 times the quantity x minus 4. I'm going to multiply both sides by that least common denominator, x minus 1 times x minus 4. It is a subtraction sign, so it looks like an addition. Let me bring down those fractions above. And bring over my least common denominator. Okay, so when I multiply this fraction by the least common denominator, the x minus 4s will cancel out. I'm left with x minus 1 times x plus 6. Bring down a subtraction sign. When I multiply this denominator with this, everything cancels out, so I have minus 30. And then when I multiply this denominator by this, then my x minus 1s cancel out. I'm left with 3 times the quantity x minus 4. Now we're going to distribute. Over here we'll get x squared plus 5x minus 6 minus 30 equals 3x minus 12. I'm going to move the 3x and add the 12. So I'm going to have x squared plus 2x minus 6, no, minus, hold on. This is negative 36. Negative 36 plus 12 is negative 24. Then I'm going to see if I can find factors of a times c that will give me a sum of b. And that would be negative 4 and positive 6. Yes. So then x minus 4 times x plus 6. Then do the zero product property. Add 4 to both sides. Subtract 6 from both sides. Now I want you to notice it says that my solution above, oh, you can't see all that writing. Above it says my solution is only x equals negative 6. Why is this one the only solution? Why not this one? Well, if you look up here, if you put 4 in the denominator, then you'll have a denominator that's 0, and that's not possible. So that's why that one of x equals 4 cannot work. It's excluded. This is my only solution. We're in the home stretch. We only have 2 more of this type of problem to do, and then just for extra and for bonus, I want to teach you how to find the inverse of those 2 functions, like number 13 and 14. So what I will do is look at this these first 3 fractions. This denominator is good. This denominator is good. This one here, I need to factor. Can I find factors of negative 10 that will give me a sum of negative 3, negative 5, positive 2? So then that would factor into x minus 5 times x plus 2. Now my common denominator is going to be x minus 5 times x plus 2. Hopefully that feat of finding a common denominator is getting easier. I know when you first learn to do this with rational expressions, it can seem overwhelming or even difficult to find a common denominator, but it really is not. Okay, now I'm going to multiply this fraction by the least common denominator. The x minus 5s will go away. I'm left with x times x plus 2. This fraction times the least common denominator, the x plus 2s will go away. I'm left with 2 times x minus 5. Equals, those cancel out, 11. Then I'm going to distribute. I'm going to move that 11 over at the same time that I combine like terms. X squared plus 4x negative 10 minus 11 is negative 21, yeah. And then a times c, so factors of negative 21. That will give me a sum of 4, positive 7, negative 3. Do the zero product property. Set each factor equal to 0. So my two solutions are negative 7 and positive 3. For number 12, I do see that this denominator can also factor. I believe we factored this one already. It's going to be factors of 4, sum of negative 5, negative 1 times negative 4. Hopefully you're seeing that this factored into these two. So that's my least common denominator. So my least common denominator is x minus 1 times x minus 4. I'm going to multiply both sides by that least common denominator. And those cancel out with that, so I'm left with 12 on this side. Over here, the x minus 4's cancel out, so I have x minus 2 times x minus 1. And then when I multiply these two, my x minus 1's cancel out, so I'm left with minus 2 times x minus 4. Now I'm going to distribute x squared minus x minus 2s, so minus 3x plus 2 minus 2x plus 8 equals 12. We subtract 12. So x squared minus 5x. This will give me 10. 10 minus 12 is negative 2. Then, hopefully you notice the answer is up here. Can you find factors of negative 2 that'll give you a sum of 5? No, so we've got to use the quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So 25 plus 8 is 33 all over 2. And as I look at that, this isn't going to be something that would make this denominator 0, this one 0, or this one 0. So then that means these are my two solutions, 5 plus the square root of 33 and 5 minus the square root of 33.